Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Vobes show. The show will be starting any moment now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Vobes show. It is Friday, the 6th of March, 2020, and it's 8 o'clock in the evening here in jolly old Worthing. We've had a sunny day today, a bit of a frustrating day in the end, but we've had a fantastic day. Mr. Kevin Hall. Hello, Richard. Came down today, spent a bit of the time acting as a taxi driver, which was very nice, all the way from Midhurst, where he lives. And he's come down there and ferried the lovely Julia and I to pillar to post. Unfortunately, we had a slight error with a phone. We tried to fix it. It pretty much is fixed. But then there was another error and we're nearly £200 down. But that's not going to worry us, is it? Well, it's worrying me because it was my £200. But never mind. We've got a bright side ahead of us. Yes, the weekend is here and that is all that matters. And people can relapse and take it easy, which will be great. Let's find out who is out there. We've got Mark, Donny McLeod. Hello, Mark, to you. Enters and finds a seat. Fantastic. Checks the popcorn levels, which is superb. And I'm afraid, yes, we haven't got the the Pearl and Dean music. Tally ho, says Ernie. Nice to see you there, Ernie. How are you? He says he's watching with Lorraine and her family in Bevendine in Brighton. Oh, in Bevendine. Hello to you, Lorraine and your family. As you know, 87-year-old father, still alive with the old Sussex accent. Fantastic. If only I had the Sussex accent, I would be so pleased. Les Jarvis is here. Good evening to you. Mickey Stevens, or Mikey rather. Kevin Hall, I just said that. Where in Sussex? Mr. Pilfold also on board, which is great. How weird, on the PC you don't get a timestamp with the messages like you do on the mobile. Oh, didn't know that. Laura Riddle, hello to you, Laura. Lovely to see you. Audrey Forbes Hamilton, hello, nice to be here, which is great. Nigel Sadler, he's here. Crusader Nuts, Kiora. No, we've got some Corona, but I don't think anyone wants to talk about that this evening. Mark Dunny McLeod says, why not buy a curry on the way out this evening from the Taj Mahal on the high street? Or, of course, you could actually fly out to India and get one there. Although you might catch all sorts of bits and pieces on the way. Don't go by Finnair, by the way. We've already had one airport disappear into nothing. Finnair may also go that way, who knows. Andy Stacey, good evening to you. Hello, Andy. Lovely to hear from you. And Philip Hammond. Good evening, Richard. Good evening. Lovely to see you. Wendy Laurie. Hi, Richard. Lovely to see you. The perfect start to the weekend. Let's hope it stays that way. You're very kind. Lovely people. Come walk with me. Hey! Hey there. Judith, good evening. Mark Johnny McLeod says, are you able to talk over your shoulder then, Kevin? He does a lot of that, yes. He's driving like that. Where to, son? Where to? Where would you like to go? Hello there. Kevin here. Kevin's cab. Where would you like to go, Richard? We've been all over the place, ladies and gentlemen. Now there's a story. The story of the £200. Oh, blimey. Yes, I'll maybe get into that a little bit later on, which is a bit of a shame. Robert Baxter, good evening, everyone. Hello, Robert. Lovely to see you. The Veg Grower Podcast, Richard Suggett there. I thought Kevin would be on the show tonight. Well, he shied of that, I'm afraid. He had to go and do some stuff. So he's probably had enough. I'm surprised that Kevin is out there, bless him, he's been so kind, ferrying us about. Andy Dalgleish, hello chums, lovely to see you. The lovely Julia, PMG, whatever that means. I'm late. Yes, for goodness sake, Julia, what's happened to you? Linda Kane, evening all. New laptop, no wine glass anywhere near. Don't blame you. You be careful. You can open your wine and as soon as the show finishes. And then you can toast yourself to the weekend, which would be lovely. Oh my God. Oh, OMG, not PMG. Yes, well, who knows what PMG stands for. Mr. Great Plum, good evening to you, Matthew. Lovely to see you out there. Very kind, drifting in. And Kathy Owen, she says, finally made it. It's live. Hello to the lovely Julia. Also, hello, Kathy. Thank you for coming along on this Friday, and, you know, great start to the weekend. I don't know what the weather is going to be over the weekend. Let's, fingers crossed, hope that there is no more rain for a while, because obviously when we get into the summer there will be hosepipe bans. We know that. We can hear it already. We can hear the councillors going, do you know, I think what will rattle the cages of the British people, we will say you cannot have any hosepipes. That will be the thing. Because I'm sure that they get together and they just plan, how can we rattle the British culture a little bit more? Yes, we've had Brexit. That was quite good. We've got coronavirus. That's going well. We've had climate change for a bit. We've had the hole in the ozone layer. We did the 2,000-year stamp thing with everything. We still haven't had the aeroplane. I mean, some aeroplanes have fallen out of the sky, but that's not down to the council planning. So there's got to be other things, isn't there? I'm sure they're dreaming up all sorts of exciting things which will rattle the nerves of us mere mortals who sit here and try and get through life as it's dished up. We the serfs who have to obey our landlords or landowners and whatever. Where in Sussex says the Pearl and Dean music is called Asteroid and was released as a single. The bit you hear in the cinema was the whole thing. Shortest single ever found. Ba 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 ba. Yes, I do actually have a copy of that somewhere, but not on this machine. When I used to do the Vobes show, which was a podcast, not this show, it never had the problem of YouTube saying, oh yeah, that's a bit of copyright. I never used to worry about the copyright in 10, 12 years that I was doing it. Nobody ever knocked on my door. Oi, excuse me, you can't put your podcast out, because they didn't have the technology to test. Now, yes, the last show we did when we were playing all that music, I had a look there. It's completely demonetised. Not that it actually makes any money, so they can't do that. And they would just put in there, oh, it's an infringement of copyright! Infringement! 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 These are sort of music from so long ago that nobody could barely remember it unless they were played in the Vogue show. You know, it's like, I bet some of these tunes are never played ever, and we're releasing them a new sense of life, and people may leap out and buy those tracks. Unlikely, but they might, you know, whereas before they're just catching dust in a vault. Anyway, not to worry. Kathy Owens says, hello from California. I'll be back. You can be back, I'll be Tchaikovsky. Where in Sussex says, if Finnair goes bust, it will be finished air. Yes, it will be the finest Finnish air from Finland, which would be nice. Kevin Hall says, Mr. Veg Grower, got my grandson's birthday this weekend. Got to make some plans. What about planting radishes? That's always fun. I did that. I'd planted radishes with Richard Suggett. Endless entertainment planting seeds. You can watch one of his videos. He's got endless videos of him planting seeds. It's gripping stuff. And I watched them first thing in the morning, actually, about 1 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep. It sends me straight back again. It's marvellous. Sorry, Richard. I didn't mean that. It was a bit of a nasty dig there. I don't know what's got into me. Mark Donny McLeod says, thanks for the info. Where in Sussex? That's on Mr. Pilfold's behalf. It's a pleasure. Not quite sure what info he's given you. Probably some cynical stuff, but I'm sure it's very good. Nigel Sandler says, a bit of a Swiss then for you. 7 shillings and fourpence halfpenny. Where in Sussex? Yes, I'll get onto that in a second. I'm just catching up with all the things. Dave Ford, here we are. Dave Ford says, Logan has just had his bath. I bet there's a video coming out of that, which will be exciting. Has Logan now, I imagine you've been on the television, you've probably been in the local magazine. What else is there? Logan Logan flies to the moon. That will get big attention, Dave. You get a lot of extra viewers if you do that. Logan walks on the moon with Moondog Logan. I think that would really improve things. So give that, little 10 pence little freebie idea. If you make millions out of that idea, the first dog on the moon, Dave goes moonwalking. Actually, just moonwalking. I'd love to see you do some moonwalking. I'm sure that will get the views in. Then, if you get any of that, I want 10%, please. because for suggesting it, if that's all right. Come walk with me. He says, if a woodchuck could chuck wood, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck? He could probably chuck quite a bit of wood if he's a woodchuck. If he's a metal chuck, then tighten him up like that, get the old file on him, and make sure the blade doesn't snap, because that can cause all sorts of headaches, especially if there's not an ironmonger's nearby, which I've had happen to me, in actual fact. Not a terribly interesting story, mind you, but a true one. So, what do you do? Do you want truth, or do you want fact or fiction? Do you want fiction that's in, hang on. Mr. Mercer, I can give you large dollops of fiction. It's one of my stock-in trades. The other stock-in I hang up by the fire once a year on the 23rd. Linda Kane says, no glass, just the bottle. All right, look. No glass of wine nearby. She's swigging out. I can just picture you, actually. I can picture you there in the evening. You've watched the Vobes in the morning, you've listened to the Naked Englishman midday, and now you've seen this and you're thinking, do you know what? Where's that bottle of wine? I'm reaching for it. Reach, and then you'll drink copious amounts of it. You'll get a little soporific, and then you'll be reaching for in the bathroom. Come walk with me, says PMG, plonker mowing grass. There we are, plenty of those out there, especially at this time of year. After all that rain we've had, you'll see many plonkers trying to get the lawn nice and trim for the weekend. Glenn Johnson, was watching Crufts. Oh, bless. Could have been worse. You could have been out there watching crusts. Now, a lot of people cut their toast or their bread, don't they? And then they just sit there looking at the crusts. And Mum says, are you going to eat those? And you say, no. And she's like, oh, well, we'll have to give them to the ducks. Something to do at the weekend. Now, who goes out feeding the ducks these days? Are we allowed to do that? Probably not allowed, because a lot of bread, I've been told, has gluten. And if those ducks get their bills stuck, well, they can't spend any money at all, can they? Robert Baxter has said, I thought you said thin air. Yeah, no, fin, as in a fish with a fin. Yes. Come walk with me, says, so you're a survivor, Glenn. I'm not quite sure. What do you think of the new Tevill Gate plans, Richard? I haven't seen them, but I've seen the new building that's going up with all the prefabricated. It looks like a place out of Noddyland. Noddy, the little man with the red and yellow car. Don't know if anyone's seen the new thing in Worthing. It's one big frame went up almost overnight. I mean, it took about 2 weeks, and suddenly there's this great big Meccano frame up, and now they're in the process of putting these prefabricated windows and brick, and it just looks hideous so far. But maybe they'll put some Doric columns out the front, and a nice portico over the top, and some dentils going across the frontage. That they might do that with a festoon or two either side, or Venetian windows either end. And give it that Palladian look. But they may not, of course. Robert Croser, he says, blazer tonight. Oh, you're outside. Poor, I got to feel sorry for Robert. He's out by the blazer. Trying to get nice and warm. I suppose he's been kicked out by the wife again, and he's there on his phone trying to get a signal, watching the old Vobes with the flames going out. A lot of people feeling very sorry for him and giving him bottles of turpentine to drink, which is quite nice. The Veg Grower podcast says, anyone bought Country File magazine today? If you want a pin-up of the naked gardener, well, Richard Suggett's in there, bending over in a very uncanny position, but very flattering if you happen to be the other side of a wooden shed. So there you go. Come walk with me says, I want unification. You can have some unification if you so wish. I don't know where you get it from. I think there's a small unification shop at the end of the road selling bags of it. Big, colourful bags, which will be nice. Somebody's just said good evening and I missed them. Hang on, I've got to go squivel back over there. I think that was Ed Loud. Good evening. Hello, Ed. Lovely to see you. Thanks very much. Keep the noise down. That would be good. Nigel Sadler is talking to somebody else. Fiona Cooper says, I'm enjoying a bottle of wine. What is it with all these people drinking these bottles of wine? It's outrageous. I haven't got a thing. All I've got is a glass of water. So here's a thing. Lovely Julia, the clumsy, lovely Julia. She's got a baby. She doesn't get much sleep at night these days, poor soul. And she dropped her phone. She dropped her phone many times, but she dropped it. You know when you drop your phone, you can't help it. It happens to us all. I've dropped my phone. She smashed the screen. The screen got broken. What do you do? Well, you know, a new phone of one of hers is very expensive. So I said, look, I know a shop. And I do know a shop because I went in this shop in Worthing. Very nice people. And I went in there with a mate of mine, and he had problem with his phone, and they fixed it within an hour, and he was very happy. So I said to Julie, I said, there's this shop in Worthing. Excuse me, burping away. I said, there's his shop in Worthing. Let's go in and see if they can fix it. Mr. Taxi Driver Hall came down from Midhurst to make sure that nothing untoward was going on. And we went into the shop and we said to the geezer, look, the screen is broken. Is there anything you can do? And he said, yeah, we can do that, but it's about 160 quid. And then he looked at the back, and the back of the phone was a bit smashed up. He says, I can do you a nice new back for 12 quid. So I said, oh, well, that would be good. Why don't we do the whole lot together? Julia said, well, I don't have very much money. I said, well, don't panic. I haven't paid you wages for ages. A lot of people have said, Flybe been saying that recently, haven't they? You haven't been paying us wages for ages. And I don't want any more free flights to Beirut. Thank you very much. So I said, look, let me sort it out for you as a generous thing. You help me out left, right and centre with all the videos and stuff. And you've cooked some food for me over in the long distance past. And, you know, you're going to accompany me on a canal. The least I can do is sort it all out. So I gave them the money. They fixed the phone. We went back an hour or so later, picked up the phone. It all looked lovely and great. Said, thank you very much. Went out and gave Julia the phone, and she was thrilled, and that was that. Got home, and then I got a text from Julia saying, it's great, phone's all working except for one thing. What's that? The microphone doesn't work. What do you mean the microphone? Is it muted? No, I can make calls, but nobody can hear me. What do you mean? Nobody can hear you? So we have this situation. If she puts the phone on loudspeaker, it works. But if you don't have it on loudspeaker, you know, it doesn't work, which is awkward because you can't record things on the internal voice recorder and things like WhatsApp and Messenger, you know, all these sort of extra things. So, and because the loudspeaker is getting a lot of, feedback and stuff. So it's not ideal to listen to. So she said she was a bit disappointed. And I said, well, I'm not surprised you're disappointed. So I said, we'll have to go back in the morning and say, oi, bloody microphone doesn't work. We wondered if there was a setting that's just become switched off in that process. So I don't know if anybody knows anything about Android phones, the S9. If anyone knows why a microphone wouldn't be working, then please let us know, because the poor old Julia, absolutely distraught. And if you think Julia's distraught, I've been tearing my head. Well, I haven't got any to tear out, but I've been picking my eyeballs. No, I haven't got any of those left. Well, anyway, I've been very upset that I've just parted with nearly a couple £100, 177 to be precise. I did inflate it a little bit by 30-something quid. But, or 27, whatever it was, and 23. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, we have a phone that the microphone doesn't work, and so we're very sad. We're so sad. It's so very sad. So if anyone knows the answer to that, then let us know. Otherwise, we're going to go back in the shop and say, there's a problem. So that would be good. Come Walk With Me is chatting to Nigel Sandler. It's very nice. Come Walk With Me says, yeah, that's a glass of water. It is a glass of water. Dave Ford says there's some old pilots. All right, there's some old pilots. And there are some bald pilots, but there are no old bald pilots. Right, and then he references Frank Spencer. I'm not quite sure where that was going. Jeff will send Julia one, says Robert Croser. Jeff will send Julia one. Come Walk With Me says, I've had a hard case on my phone because I know I'll drop it. Yes, good. Well, I've got a hard case. In fact, this is my son's phone, actually. And it comes with a hard case. It didn't come with a nut case. It's a nut case using it. And it's got this, I think this is a like JCB thing, although it's black. And you can drop it loads and loads of times and it breaks. So best thing to do is obviously don't drop your phone. Well, obviously it's easier said than done. Come Walk Me says, I just read that. Nigel Sadler says, new phone screen, take it to your nearest vape shop. That's what they actually do. I don't know what you're talking about there. Glenn Johnson says, I think the Vobe has Bacardi, maybe a tequila, if only. I mean, I don't drink much alcohol now, barely anything, if ever. Vape shops repair as you wait for about 30. Nigel, they are electronic cigarettes, mate. They are electronics, different thing. It's not phone calls. Veg Grower says, I certainly have Dave. He certainly has Dave. That is a program that mainly shows a lot of repeats, if I remember rightly, but I haven't got a television, so I have no idea. Dave Ford says, just done mine, Mr. S, Duke of York and Red of Duke of... I don't know what they're talking about. The mic may have been knocked loose, says Come Walk With Me. I wonder if that's the case. Yeah, I wonder how that gets fixed. 177, you can't be that skint, says Robert Croser. Well, I know. It can't be. I am now, thank you very much. See, my son Billy pays me rent in cash. So I've basically, that's my food money for the month, gone. So just trying to help out a friend. Julia says, I'm so grateful to be able to watch the show on my phone, thanks to the awesome Richard. It's my pleasure, Julia. You do a lot of things helping me out. You come and do the show. I can't afford to pay you. So that's that. Nigel says, cable damage, or more likely it's probably popped off the board. It's mounted so close to the screen. Well, we'll take it back and see if they can pull it off and fix it, because it was working perfectly before. But the thing is, the loudspeaker works. So if you know when you go on and you go, oh, I'll put it on loudspeaker, that actually works. Is that a different microphone? Is that the same microphone? Jeff says, Jeff will fix the phone for Julia if I were there and put cows in it. Bless you, Jeff. That would have been great. Superb. Are there two microphones on the S9? If so, it sounds like one normal broke when it was dropped, or connecting cable has become loose. Well, we'll take it back in and we'll find out and see what's happening. I would have written it off, Richard. Get the tax back. Well, it's not my phone, is it? It's not my phone, so I can't do that. And Julia isn't on self-employment stuff. So, but then, you see, I'm not in the business that you are in, Robert Croser, nobbling the tax for people, so to speak. I'm not really supposed to say that, but I've said it now. I've just said it out loud. Where in Sussex says, if only one microphone, then it's clearly working. Boot in safe mode. I don't know. How do you boot a phone in safe mode? Julia, see if there's a safe mode that you can boot it up in. It might be that. Where it's probably a safe mode. It's probably a software issue. Well, we did try that. I'm good, old man, and hope you are too. Good. Well, that's marvellous. Thank you very much. Now, in today's show, there's no moment. There's no moment from anybody. I had nothing sent in, ladies and gentlemen. So it's just me waffling. But don't let that worry you, because I have a book, as you can see here. This is a lovely book. This is called The Land, Now and Tomorrow by somebody called R.G. Stapleton. And believe me, it's as dry and as dull as it sounds. Really is. Not only that, there are pages and pages of words in this, which is it's about 300 nearly 400 pages. And this was written in 1930 something. Hang on, I'm just going to see if I can find when this was written. I want to tell you about this. This is fascinating. This was, I wonder if they've got it in the... No, they haven't got it in there. Isn't that weird? Old books don't... You know, new books, they always tell you when they're published. Old books don't always do that. They don't always give... This must be it was quite expensive, actually. 1935 it's got in there. 1935. And it's talking... So it was written probably in 1933 or 34. The Land, Now and Tomorrow. And the interesting thing about this, I've only read the introduction, really. I just read the first chapter. So this is, 90 odd years ago. 85 years ago. Something like that. 85, 86 years ago. Something like that. Okay. And this chap seems to have done a survey. This is sort of a bit like the Doomsday Survey on of rural England. Okay, I bought it because it was referenced in another book. It's a bit like that. I'll read a book and then it will say, oh, Archie Staplehurst, what was his name? Stapleton. Archie Stapleton said such and such and such and such. And I thought, oh, he sounds a wise man. I better go and buy his book. So I look on there and there was the book and it's, like £5 plus postage. I think, oh, it's under a tenner. That's okay. That's always my little, as I was once said by a very nice chap, I'm so tight, what is it he said? I'm so tight I squeak. That's right. I'm so tired. So if a book is over £10, it's too much. If it's and I always buy them secondhand. Never buy brand new books these days. Can't afford to. So I always buy them secondhand. So this came the other day, referenced in it, and I knew roughly what it was about. And it's going to be a bit of a dry and heavy read. But the first bit, the interesting bit. Now I don't know if Mike Dixon is out there because this would be right up his street. About neuroplasticity. Okay. He's very interested, and he's been doing a lot of mental research into the mental condition of people and how to unstress your life. That's what Mike Dixon's been up to for the last 20 odd years. Are you out there, Mike Dixon? He may be busy. He may be busy trying not to get too stressed by watching this old nonsense. Anyway, the beginning of this book, the interesting thing about this book, bear in mind, this is 1934. Prior to the Second World War, after the First World War, it's in that interim time. There may be pressures building in Germany and things, all that kind of stuff. And this chap, 1934, please bear that in mind. Just in the introduction, I know this is going to be a fascinating book because he's talking about the urbanized state of England, but not just house building and all that kind of stuff. He's talking about how people are now, in 1934, concentrating their lives in urban environments, and that not many people get outside and enjoy the countryside, which for generation and generation people did, and how healthy and useful that was for their mental state. He's talking about that in 1934. Now, we're nearly 100 years later, not quite, but just under. And I was reading that and I was thinking, do you know what? We have more people working indoors. I mean, this was what he seems to be worried about. And he then goes and does this great big survey about how many people are working indoors and all the things that leads to, and how important it is for us as human beings to be connected to the land. Now, that in itself, I think, is fascinating, that in 1934, when they had a lot more land, and he's talking at that point that there was in this country, 85 years ago, 40 million people in England or in Britain. I forget which, but in Britain. And how many do we have now? 70 million, is it? 70 million? So we put in 80 years, 30 million, almost double the amount of population in 85 years. Almost we've doubled the population. And back then, he is worried that too many people are living on top of each other and very close to each other, and that they're not connected with the land. Because although we have a sophisticated side of us, which can do lots of exciting things and invention and go in foreign travel and all sorts of bits and pieces, people are working in offices and they're sitting down and they're being stationary, and they're principally top heavy. The amount of people of the country are indoors more frequently than they're outdoors. And he's talking about how worried that is for our mental health and for our physical being, and for the culture of who we are and what we are. And I forget this figure. There was a figure, he said, that was, I can't remember, on page 5. There was this weird, this figure that he's come to the conclusion of how many people, what percentage of people actually spend most of their time outdoors to the amount of people who spend their time indoors. And it was something like 5% back then. And you think, well, if nothing has changed and it's still around about 5% of the population spend their time, most of their time outdoors, breathing fresh air, having silence, taking in nature, looking at clouds, appreciating trees, walking by streams, getting up onto the hills and countryside, and the other 95% are sitting in artificial rooms with artificial light, processed food, not then, but now, watching screens and all that sort of stuff. He's arguing, from what I can see, that this is not very beneficial for us. And that's 85 years ago. And what have we done? We seem to have just gone further and further in that direction. Now, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. What do you think? Do you think that nature is a thing that we should cherish and get out into? Or do you think the sophistication of our brains means that we no longer need any of this nature stuff because we have screens now? We can sit in front and watch some bald bloke with glasses pontificate some load of old nonsense on a Friday evening, only drinking a glass of water and not doing anything terribly healthy. What do you think? I'll be interested in your thoughts. Or, because obviously most of the country doesn't care about nature in any shape or form, because there would be far more protests and far more people out on the streets waving and trying to get the government to do things where they're not gobbling up the countryside, or people would be getting out into the countryside, wouldn't they? But most people, it seems, don't give a monkeys about that, don't really care too much about nature. You know, the odd bird that they can see, oh yeah, there's a bird gone in my bird bath, that's all right. I'm all right, Jack. I've seen my element of nature. So what do you think? Let me know. Be curious to see what you've done. Linda Kane says, you're so tight, you're watertight. That's true. Yes, I am. Thanks very much. What ho? Kathy Owen says, I think it sounds awesome. I like that kind of history. It's going to be a fascinating read, I can tell you. Outside doesn't exist, says Come Walk With Me. I think outside is very slowly becoming just something you see out your window between you and your neighbour. He says it's a myth. Robert Croser says, no dry as a mummy's... Yeah, I'm not going there. Mark Donny McLeod says, I thought the 30s when cycling and the walking boom took off. I know the 50s up north was a big surge in walking. And I think you're right. I think there were a lot of people were trying to promote at that time the outdoor stuff, trying to get people out. I mean, there was a whole resurgence, I don't know if it was a resurgence or a surgence of people talking about naked bathing, wasn't there? There was the naturalists who wanted to get out there and take their clothes off, or they would walk in almost next to nothing and let the sun rays go on. But as soon as they started doing that, guess what? We all were told, oh no, there's UV rays out there. You're all going to get cancer if you get outside and take your top off. No matter whatever we do, it seems like somebody will come along and say, oh no, can't do that. What we want you to do is to stay indoors and keep your mouth shut. It seems to me. Robert Croser says, Andrew, I'm walking on the... All right. Nigel Sadler says something. Glenn Johnson, but imagine if we went for a walk in the countryside and everyone was there. Well, imagine it. That's the same as when a policeman came up to me and I'd stopped, not quite on the hard shoulder on a motorway, having left a motor service station, and said to me, what's the matter? What's the matter? I said, well, I was just answering the phone, but I came off the road before I got onto the motorway. And he said, well, you can't park here. It's the hard shoulder. I said, well, it's not quite the hard shoulder, is it? I mean, I've just left the thing. There's about 50 feet between here and the motorway, and I'm perfectly safe. He said, oh yes, but what if everybody parked here? If everybody parked on the hard shoulder? And I said, well, if everybody parked on the hard shoulder, there must be something very wrong with the world. Whereupon he slapped a great big fine on my car, and that was that. But no, everybody isn't going to do that, are they? Everybody won't be out in the countryside, imagine, he says. Come walk with me, silence. Hard to get that in nature with all the traffic. Exactly. I mean, these are the things that I'm particularly banging on about at the moment and worried about. We don't seem to know what we have forgotten. That seems to be half the problem. We go out there and we go, look, there's a blade of grass and there's a bit of a thin tree. Yeah, no, there's nature. But we seem to have, because we haven't been around 100 years ago to see what we've lost, we're losing it so rapidly that nature, and we think, I'm sure the Steve Pilfolds of this world think, oh, no, we've still got nature, Richard. There's nothing to worry about. Build as many houses as you like. It doesn't really matter. It's all going to be fine. Have as many people come into the countryside. It's all going to be great. But we haven't been around long enough to appreciate that. Our industrial life and all the rest of it is just such a tiny thing on the span of the world, and yet in that space of time we seem to have gobbled it all up, chopped down all the trees. It's all going a bit weird. Andrew Norris says, just found out, Nigel, I'll be catching up again, something like that. The 9-foot cycleways were built in the 30s. Were they 9 foot, high, off the ground? Blimey, you would certainly see them then. All that concrete on the ground, yeah, taking up the countryside. That's no good. Nature is something we need to hold tight on and love, says Come Walk With Us. Absolutely agree with you there. Michael Angel says nature is not important to bankers. Why have we elevated bankers to the people who are important? That's what I'd like to know. Why have we managed to do that? Why are bankers more important than the people who love nature? Why is that the case? Why have we allowed that to happen? Drinking water is healthy, says Veg Grower Podcast. That's very true, and here is some. Was anybody saying that drinking water wasn't healthy? I mean, drinking other things is probably less healthy, but drinking water, of course, is healthy. I mean, we all depend on water. I'm not quite sure what you mean. I think, says Robert Baxter, what you're saying is right. I think it does good for you to be outside, and I think that's the message that most of us are not getting out enough. I mean, exercise. We know that not enough people are having exercise in this, and we're all incredibly sedentary. And we know that if you sit down in your office day after day after day, you're actually knocking more years off your life than if you smoked. That's been recently talked about. Come Walk With Me says that we need more Julias in the world. I know it's a scary thought, but you know I'm right. Absolutely. More tree huggers. Don't chop the trees down, chop the buildings down instead. Linda Kane says, unbelievably, there are people who hate being outside, who hate out being in the countryside, feeling uncomfortable if they can't see concrete and can't wait to get back in the town. Isn't that weird? I find that the most strange and most peculiar thing, that people could actually be frightened about being in the countryside. I'm sure that, they'll see whatever they might see. I don't know, not a fox, because they're probably used to seeing foxes now, but a badger or a donkey, and think, my goodness, what's that? That's a wild creature. A cow, for example, So that is unbelievable. Philip Hammond says, can't beat the countryside, Richard. Well, it seems that people seem to be beating it. We don't want them to. You're absolutely right. Floating our boat. Here we go. You can still spend a day in the countryside and not see a soul. If they wanted to, they would, wouldn't they? As a question. Well, this is the thing. I don't think people know. I don't think people know how special it is. Of course, if everybody in the town went out at the same time, like Glenn says, it would be bloody awful. I mean, that's it is the privilege of those people who get out into the countryside to have that space to themselves. And this is, I suppose, that's the selfish argument is, well, if everybody came out, then it wouldn't be so nice. But maybe if people didn't need quite so much concrete all around them, we'd have a little bit more countryside to go round. Come Walk With Me says, feel the breeze between the legs. Yes, you feel the breeze between the legs, Matt. I don't know what you're doing with your hairdryer, but let's not go there. He says, let's all flop it out. Yeah, what you do with your window open in a gale is another business, mate. Linda says, naturalists always thought they were a little weird. Audrey Forbes Hamilton says, I live in the countryside and visitors from the town often ask me if I'm afraid of being isolated. I'd be scared of living in the city. Well, the thing about that is if you live in the countryside and you're isolated, you're probably much more safer, aren't you? Because who's going to wander down a dark lane to try and get you? I mean, okay, there are some people, thieves and what have you, targeting certain people. But if your house is down there in a dark lane, they've got to be fairly cocksure that they're not going to suddenly find somebody sticking a gun in their face. Or that there are, some man traps down that pathway. So there we are. Glenn Johnson says, it's oxygen that kills us. See what it does to iron. I'm not quite sure. I don't think we're all made of iron, are we? Apart from Iron Man. But that's a Marvel comic hero, is it? I don't know. I don't think about these characters. I know someone, says Robert Baxter, who used to pretend the sound of the motorway in the distance was the sea. Well, if you can keep that going, but if you pick up a shell and you put it up to your ear, is that what you hear now? Oh, I hear the sound of a motorway there. And in this one, oh, it's the horn of an old factory. How lovely is that? And get the smell of a nice coal burning factory there, chimney puffing it all out. How lovely that is. Glenn says, I did say imagine. Yes, no, that's true. He's doing his John Lennon impression there, which was very nice. And I expect you did it on your big double bass, did you? I'm not quite sure what you what it's got a. You play the double bass, don't you? Dum 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 dum. Imagine all the people. Dum dum dum. I'm not quite sure how you get dum dum into the Imagine song, but imagine that you could. Mark Donny McLeod says, I'm quite happy not to have so many get out in nature, more for me. Yes, I mean, that's, as I said before, that is a sort of selfish way of looking at it. But we want people to be healthy as a nation overall, because otherwise we all get affected, because people aren't working, and it's all that productivity. I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm just putting forward what I've read so far in the space of 20 minutes, waiting for the show to start. So he may come round and say, no, everybody should be inside 4 walls of concrete with no windows and electric lights, and you'll all be fine. He may say that. Don't think so, but he may do it. So that's that. And Michael Angels says, keep the people in the towns, then you can observe what they're doing. Well, there is a theory, is there not, that this is exactly what is happening, and it's actually it's a conspiracy theory. I think that this is a theory that I don't know if you would call it people in charge, but it just seems that in the way things are going, people are coming off the land. The irony is the poor people lived on the land. They couldn't afford to live in the cities and towns and things because you needed a house and what have you. And the poor people lived in hovels. All right, they lived in hovels, that's very true. But they lived out on the land and in the countryside. Then, as we got a bit better and we had the Industrial Revolution, which started very slowly with new things coming on, the mechanical farm implements, and you didn't need so many labourers out there. The labouring men had to find work or they would starve and their families would starve, so they went into the towns where factories were beginning to be set up. And suddenly this movement of people off the land. Well, now the curious thing is, in the past you had few of the rich landowners owning the land. There were few of them because they had big swathes of land and they owned the land. And now, of course, they've sold off that land, so there's a lot of rich people out there. The people who've got the money now own the countryside. They own the countryside. You and I watching this, the impecunious of us, we don't own the countryside anymore. We can't even can't even have a house with much of a garden anymore because gardens are a luxury, an absolute love. If you want a little patch of grass and you want one of those new builds, think again, mate, because your neighbour is here, your other neighbour is there, and the other neighbour is there, and if you manage to get 7 blades of grass between you, you're absolutely, it's luxury, lad. So it's a bit of a worry, really. I know someone who is scared of cows, says Dave Ford. Well, I'm scared of cows too, so there's 2 of us. Yeah, they can be scary if you get pressed up against a wall and they're a little bit rustled. If they're on the other side of the field, that's usually pretty okay. I don't think I ever said any of those things where it said we're in Sussex and I put those things into your mouth. So, because actually you are my puppet. There's the Pillfold puppet, which is very nice. He comes out of a pillbox and he says, Richard, that's not right. Is it not right? I may have misappropriated words to your good self, Mr. Pillfold. We get on very well, Mr. Pillfold. You may think that we're at each other's throats, but we nip down the pub, and we have a good laugh, and from time to time. I can't remember the last time, but we do it. Andrew Murphy says, last week in the countryside, I got soaked whilst filming a moment of Murphy. Well done, Andrew Murphy. And this bloke actually says, when was the last time somebody felt the thrill of getting a soaked shirt? Words to that effect, this guy was saying. And I thought, actually, that's true. When you get caught and you get rain on you, most people are going, oh, no, look, it's wet. And they have to put all this. But he's saying, embrace it. Embrace the countryside. Embrace nature. We need to get back to nature. It's not just the countryside, but that's where nature is. We seem to think that we can survive without nature, and yet we are still a base creature. We're not like from another planet as much as people may think. We are part of this, descendants of apes, unless you happen to be one of these believers and think that the theory that most people believe is accurate, that we are descended from apes but we're still out. Because let's face it, we still do all the base things that people do. No matter how much our sophistication, we can have the most sophisticated politicians who are up there and on pedestals, or bankers or whatever, and then you look into their life and you suddenly find that their cupboard is full of these skeletons they'd rather not anybody know about, and they do all sorts of dodgy things. And they can, because they've got the money, and they can hide it, and they can hide it from the press, but ultimately they're still doing these base things, which might be, if you had, I don't know, a bunch of orangutans would be doing. Who knows? I don't know what they would. I'd love to live in a woodland or a forest. You see, there we are. Come walk with me. We'd love to do it. Who would not want to do that? Philip Hammond says, in the 60s and 70s, the countryside was almost on my back door. Now I have to drive 20 to 30 minutes to get out for a quiet walk. What has happened? What has happened? Why has that happened? And why have we let it? It seems like some of us are waking up to that now. And I'm one of them. I'm waking up to think, hang on a minute. What is going on? We are building our countryside. We are people of nature, are we not? Well, what is going on with us? So that would be interesting. Our Days Out, good evening. Good evening to you, Our Days Out. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming on to the live stream. We're talking about the countryside, and we're talking about nature, and are we as a species forgetting what nature is? Are we becoming too urbanised, and to the point that nature actually frightens us, and we daren't go out anywhere unless it's covered in concrete? Be interested in your thoughts on that. Here we go. Glenn says, no, I play bass, not double bass, just a single bass. So what is this? Is that dum, not dum, 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 dum. It's just dum, 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 dum. I don't know. Double, is that with the guitar thing, isn't it? With the metal strings that go across. Come walk with me. Hang on, before we get there, we're in Sussex. If 10 million people in London went out into the countryside, would make the drive from Hooley to the West End quite rapid. Yes, I mean, what you can't say is if everybody went out now in one lump, what would that be like? That's not really the argument. I don't think anyone is saying that is the argument. It's more about, are we as a species, as a human beings, have we moved, and what can we do about it, from the importance of embracing nature, understanding nature, and being part of nature? Have we almost said it's like a subspecies, that it doesn't really exist, that as long as I've got these walls around me, I am safe from it? And is that healthy for us? I think that's where he's going. I haven't read the book yet. It's a long book. There's about 400 pages of it, but that was the preference. And I thought, yes, that sounds exactly. And this was written in 1935, ladies and gentlemen. And in 1935, there were 40 million people in the British Isles, or in Britain, or whichever part it was. 40 million against what? 70 million now, is it? So in 85 years, we've added 35 million people. Is that really good? So I'm interested in your thoughts. Have a good weekend, Richard, from Charles. Hello, Charles Richardson. Thank you very much. I'll do my utmost. I've got to go out and do some filming tomorrow, and I may have to go and take a phone back to see if I can get it repaired, because we've had a bit of a problem, but I'm not going into that story all over again. Mark Donny McLeod says, when I was 11 and 13, I lived in Wiltshire. We just shoo cows out of the way. Heifers were a nuisance, followed you, but were harmless. Now, being on the moors is great. Yes, being on the moors. Wow. Johnson says, I love heavy rain, not normal, annoying rain. All right, yeah, heavy rain. Yeah, get out into the heavy rain. I mean, I remember I used to cycle from Horsham in West Sussex up to Petworth, 15 miles, on a regular basis to go to work. When I lived in Petworth for a short while, and I worked in Billing. I worked in Horsham. That's right, I worked in Horsham, 15 miles through Billingshurst, but up to Petworth, 15 miles. And I used to cycle that pretty much every day. It kept me fit, of course. And the point I was trying to make was, I can't remember. Oh, yes, that's right. And I remember one day it was snowing and I was cycling and I was getting hot and sweaty from the cycling. And I saw the snow around me and I thought, do you know, it would be so lovely just to roll in the snow and de-steam. I didn't, because I wanted to get home, because it was taking me about an hour and a half to do this. either way. So that was 3 hours of cycling a day. That was very good for the old stamina. It's funny what you do when when you're younger and you don't know you're doing it. Charles Richardson says, "Go on holiday, Richard." Vobes from Charles. Thank you very much. Go on holiday. Well, I'll try to. Stop with the caps, please. Says, "Come walk with me." So there we are. Robert Croser, hang on, let's see what Robert Croser is up to. "We can do what we want to nature. If nature wanted to destroy us, it could without a thought." I think you're giving the nature some sort of cerebral thing, as if it's like a god that is going to go, "Oh, you're going to do that to me, I'll do this back." I don't think it's a person that thinks in that way. I think nature works in a different way there, Robert. And so I'm not 100% sure what you mean, but, I think we are sort of destroying a lot of nature, aren't we? Because we're killing off a lot of species. Eventually, of course, it will get us, like with the bees. There's a problem with bees not pollinating enough food for us. All these things are happily to work side by side with us, which they have been for many, many years. But we have just, look at the intensive farming and what we've done, as I say, with things like bees. "Come work with me. Nature is a harsh mistress." Yes, but we certainly don't want to shut ourselves off from it. Or should we? This is the thing. Should we? Are we a bit like these dystopian video films that you see where there's, like in, like Mad Max or one of these sort of films where people live in these bubbles and there's nature out there which seems very harsh. And yet we've lived with nature for pretty much the most recent part of the human time that we've been on the earth is like a tiny little blip of time that we've somehow managed to go bonkers and destroy much of nature. Whereas in the past, we've lived, father and son has been there ploughing the field, and father and son for generation. We've lived with nature. I'm not saying we've got to go back and be the simple people that we once were. Of course, that's what everybody says. As soon as you start saying, "Oh, there are good things in nature," people think, "Oh, yes, well, you just want to go back and live on the earth, with a fire in the front and just go and plough a field and have no thoughts of progression or anything like that." And I'm not saying that at all. Oh, Dave, what have you done suggesting that? Dave says, "Are we becoming too urban? You need to get out of Sussex more, Richard. Shouldn't have said that. Rant coming." Rant's already here, mate. Rant's already on. Kevin also says, "Thanks, Glenn." Blake Adam says, "Here in Melbourne, Australia, the suburbs are spreading out into the country that people are shocked to see a kangaroo and snakes in the streets in their backyards. What do people expect?" This is true. You do hear these stories. I mean, over here, the lovely Cynthia Julian was telling me that in Thacombe, where she lives, and it's a lovely old village, but it's got a whole load of new builds. And the new builds have come in, and one of the things they've asked for is, when the cricket people are playing cricket, can they all just play one end? Because when they play the other end and hit the ball, there's likely to smash their windows. They're not keen on that. We've heard these stories where people say, the joggers, I think it's the joggers in Thacombe, they say, that there's a lot of mud on the paths. We need to go jogging in this village that we've just moved into. We've just moved into from the town. We want to go jogging with our earplugs in. And seems to be a lot of mud. You've forgotten to put the tarmac down on the paths. And you think, but you've moved into the countryside. We've heard it, with the smell of the cows. All these things where suddenly the farm has been, you can't have that there anymore and the farm's been there for generation after generation. And then these new people come in, they don't know what the countryside is like. They don't understand how it works. It's been there for thousands of years. And they've come in and they've said, "Oh, we're complaining about such and such." And because they sort of, these townies, they've got the money and what have you, they want the sort of the nice element of the countryside, the picturesque stuff of it, but they don't actually want the hardship. They don't really want the reality of it. They want the Netflix version of it. That's what it seems to me. I'm going to South Africa on holiday. Good for you, Charles. I hope you have a lovely time. Anytime you want to go, that would be great. Can you take the capitals? Can you type without typing in capitals? Charles, that would be very handy. Mark Donny McLeod is talking to Robert Croser. Glenn Johnson, I dived in the snow after a gig in Finland. Never again. Well, who knows if it was yellow snow? I wouldn't advise that. Where in Sussex we have beehives at work, and on our anti-tank defences around the building we have wild flowers growing. Well, that makes it all right then. The world is saved because we have some hives and we have a few wildflowers, and it's all right. Mr. Pilfold has saved the day. It's all growing on the anti-tank stuff, which is lovely. Thanks for that. Come walk with me, says 2050. Where the smeg has the time gone? Well, I can't answer that. I often think that. Sometimes when I'm doing this show, I look at the clock and I think, oh my God, how am I going to fill another half an hour? And then other times it just goes before we even get started. Bulls, steady. There's another thing. Do not enter a field with a bull, says Mark Donny McLeod, especially when he's getting horny, sorry for the pun, ready for breeding. I didn't see the pun, but there we are. Robert Croser says it's destroyed the dinosaurs, killed 3/3 of life on Earth with the Ice Age. We have no real defence against us, not Sentinel, Richard, just a power greater than us. Yes, and we should respect it, but we should also embrace it. I don't know quite what your argument is. I understand that, nature is a great force, but we are working. We should, try and. I think the thing is that we're just becoming so urban that we almost forget what it is to be out in nature. And when we are, we get a bit fussy, don't we? It's like, oh, there's a bit of mud on the floor, and I'm wearing Prada shoes or whatever shoes, Ferrari shoes. I don't know, some brand of shoes. I don't watch television. I don't read adverts anymore. So that's good. Come work with me. Foxes are living in the woodlands now. They used to live in the woodlands. They live in the urban areas. They'll soon be in the city. Probably they'll be at your breakfast table in the morning, pouring you your milk on your cereals, which would be nice. Nature adapts to what we do, so why can't we adapt to nature? Glenn Johnson says people move in next to live music venue and claim about the noise. Exactly. That's exactly the same sort of thing. It's like bells, isn't it, in the churches? It says, does the church have to make that noise, that discordant noise? Oh, yeah, sorry about that. The bells were cast in the 13th century, and we've had bell ringers ringing it ever since then. But I'm ever so sorry, because what is it now? Oh, it's the 21st century. We're so sorry that discordant noise that seems to be banging off on a Sunday morning in a joyous way to celebrate that it is the end of the week, and that people, if they wish to come and give thanks for things that they've had in their lives, and perhaps thank their maker if they have any faith in certain things. We're so sorry. We'll tell you what we'll do is we'll knock the church down. We'll melt down those bells and turn them into more telephones and screens and things like that, and we'll put a dirty great big block of flats in there. How about that? And why don't we get some sub-Saharan African people and shove them in there as well, just to make it really more comfortable for you? Why not? Let's do that, shall we? Never mind the fact that we once had an English culture and that we had all that. In this space of the last 80 years, let's just put another 35 million people onto this little tiny island that actually hasn't really grown very much, and see how much we like it. Audrey Forbes Hamilton says, since the Industrial Revolution and people migrated to the towns, people have become detached from the countryside. Many children who were evacuated in World War II have never seen the countryside before. Yes, and what was fascinating, I read a book about children who were evacuated into the countryside from the slums of London, and they went into the countryside. They stayed there for 3 or 4 years whilst the war was going on, the Second World War. And then some of them obviously were abused, and some of them were, you hear all those stories. That's absolutely true. But the majority seems they didn't want to go back. Having been taken out into the countryside and seeing things like cows and pigs and sheep and all that, and actually getting some fresh air, when they thought about going back to their homes in the slums, where 3 or 4 of them stayed in the same room, for which they knew no different and didn't want to go at the beginning of it, they didn't want to go back. I read a book about that. It was absolutely fascinating. Take people out into the countryside. They will love it. Charles Richardson says, bring back snug and cosy. Yes, I think that would be very good. Thanks you for changing out of the capitals. That's marvellous. COVID-19 was created, said Linda Kane, to kill off the oldies and those less healthy. Discuss. That's an interesting point. Did you see the thing in the Daily Mail? Kevin Hall alerted me to that. I forget the name of the author, but in 1981, I think it was, he wrote a book in which a deadly virus came from the same town in China and started to kill people off very rapidly. But the disease only lasted, I think, for about a day or something like that. The Veg Grower podcaster is humming, I hope to a nice tune. Little Harriet says, please discuss your thoughts on coronavirus. Well, my thoughts are it's an interesting situation and people are beginning to, I suppose, panic. I don't know if they are really panicking. I think I don't know. I haven't really given it too much worry. Clearly, people are buying tissues and hand bacterial and antibacteria stuff, but as Julia said, it's not bacteria, it's a virus, so you need antiviral things, not antibacteria. Won't make this blind bit of difference, but people of course don't understand that. I didn't understand it till she explained it to me. What you need is rubber gloves. That's what you need. I went in a pub. I was in a pub today with Kevin and Julia. We were sitting there and I went to the loo, used the loo, washed my hands thoroughly and all that. Then I had to open the door. And the door handle came towards me, so I couldn't kick it open. I had to use my hand on the door handle, and then I thought, oh, now I need to wash my hands again. So wash my hands, I had to go back to the door, whereas if you had disposable rubber gloves, you'd be all right. So that's a bit of a problem. A test of biological warfare, says Robert. That's one theory. I have heard that. Of course, the death rate you hear on the news is probably an absolute load of old nonsense. It's probably 10 times worse. I offer the benefits of the doubt, shout deliberately, Andrew, but something fishy is going on. I think something a bit odd is going on. Robert Croser says, my grandfather, who fought in the Korean War, never trusted Chinaman. Fair enough. Yes, Mikey, and just nearby the market. Not sure what that's about. Mickey Stevens is saying the English have bioweapons too, but who is this aimed at? That's the thing. Who is this? I mean, is this an accident or is it actually aimed at anyone? The Eyes of Darkness, 1981. Dean Koontz wrote a sci-fi novel at Wuhan 400. Yes, and here we have COVID-19. Of course, COVID-19, I made this point in the Naked Englishman podcast that I do. COVID-19 sounds a lot more sinister than coronavirus. Coronavirus sounds... just like it's just a virus, whereas COVID-19, I don't know whether they've named it specifically that way, but COVID-19 just has a very, very sinister ring to it. So I don't know what you make of that, or whether that's just the way it is. Glenn Johnson accidentally released. Lily Harriet says the author is Sylvia Brown. She wrote a book predicting that in 2020, pneumonia-like virus. Hang on, she wrote a book predicting... she wrote it in the past predicting 2020. Well, there's obvious... I mean, you think, how many books have been written? How many books of terrible things happening? How many of those just so happen to have a very similar thing? I think, coincidence is most likely to be on the cards there. These things can very easily get blown up because it just so happens at one book. But there may be 20 other books about viruses, one for 2021 and one for 2016 or, something like that. Who knows? Maybe never got published. Maybe written but never published, or published and nobody ever read it or was pulped. I think it's very easy when you see one book and then you can go, oh, look, it's here, isn't it? I don't know that that's necessarily a thing. It just might be a very interesting coincidence. Coronavirus isn't something to panic. 1 out of 10 colds are a type of coronavirus. Yeah, but they're not called COVID-19, are they? That's enough to make the blood drain out of your face. Weber Baker says, read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. All right, I haven't got time to read it now, obviously, coming to the end of my show, just over time. Julia says, regarding viral versus bacterial, I also say, shush, don't tell everyone. Oh, yes, you did say that. Otherwise, the antiviral creams, which are still on the shelf, people have forgotten that. They've just taken all the antibiotics. They'll be back in there for those. Kevin All says that, yeah, thanks for that. We've done that, Kevin. We've said all that. We've already said all that. We said it. We just said it. Read up. We said it. Lily Harriet 29 says End of the Days by Sylvia Brown. Very spooky. Yes, a lot of spooky stuff. Jeff Kellenson says I went to Walmart in Salt Lake City, Utah today. Salt Lake City. And he says shelves picked clean of masks, gloves and antibacterial wipes. Isn't that strange? You think of all the things to be buying. What you might want to be buying is padlocks, things to put against the door to stop people coming in, perhaps some more bullets to shoot people when they're all out of food and doing that. But no, they've got a nice antibac. So you're coming in, could I wipe? Masks, what are they going to do? They're not going to help. Use loo paper to protect your hands and open the door to get out. It says you could, yes, if you can use loo. It's funny how people are stocking up. They've got their priorities, haven't they? You know, the world is about to end, but they're making sure they've got enough loo paper. Doesn't that strike you as being a little bit the priorities are in the very, at least they can have a crap and wipe their asses. At least when they die of the thing, they say that, oh, look at that chap there. He did the right thing. He's died in a horrible, agonising death, but at least his arse is nice and clean. That's obviously getting the priorities in the right way. So here we go. Charles Richardson, has Julia got a double... What are you on about? Children with under... Anyway, I think we've come to the end of the show now, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much. Been very interesting to talk to you, or at you, in this case. Have a lovely weekend, whatever you do. I'm off to see Kim Murden this weekend to talk about coronavirus, actually, and record a video about how to keep healthy and what sort of herbs can you use that will help your immune system should you feel a little ill. We'll record that and get that out as quickly as we can, because she's a very clever lady and she's been a herbalist for a long time. Might be useful, might not. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Take care, one and all. Have a wonderful weekend. We hope that you enjoy yourself and so on and so forth. But from me, the Vobie One-Eyed Kenobi, back again on Monday, unless one's got the dreaded COVID-19. Till then, take care. Remember to get outside if you can. Don't sit down too long. And have a good one. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.